Good morning. Today is Monday, September 28th, 2023. I'm calling the Municipal Service and Properties Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Bishop.
Here.
Starr.
Present.
Hurston. Jones. Casey.
Present.
Kelly. Moore.
Here.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our first session of the fall season. First, I'm going to start with ordinance number 748, 2023. Good morning, Director.
Good morning.
All right, ordinance number 748, 2023 by council members McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request. This is an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter into an amendment to the June 30th, 2016 Property Operations and Programming Agreement with the Group Plan Commission for Public Square to provide a restricted contribution to support the Commission's maintenance obligations on Public Square. Okay, Director, you're here to speak about this piece of legislation.
Good morning, through the chair to the members. Appreciate the opportunity. The city will provide the Group Plan Commission with a restricted contribution to support the Commission's maintenance obligations, as you mentioned, on Public Square. This is a one-year term for $500,000. The funding source is the general fund. There is no separate contractors listed. And I do have Assistant Director Laird here for any questions that you may have.
Okay. So the $500,000 is going to come out of the general fund, you say, correct? And this is just for what on Public Square? Just the general maintenance?
To the chair, that's correct. It's for general maintenance, snow clearance, trash removal, things like that, yes.
Okay, so our regular city departments won't serve this, or is this some kind of stepped up?
Stepped up. It's enhanced. So we do some things there, but because of this investment that we made in the Public Square, we want to make sure that it's treated as a pearl. So we do our thing, and they do theirs as well. And in addition to that, so there's actually an agreement in the contract that talks about what we do versus what they do.
Okay, so is anybody else putting up money other than the city?
To the chair, from my understanding, all I know is that we put up that $500,000 for the initial. That's all I know of.
Okay, okay. So help me understand, when we put up additional money for a district in the city that's covered by our regular Public Works Department, correct? It's all of the services on Public Square is covered by our general Public Works Department, correct?
To the chair, pretty much so, yes.
And we put up this additional money. What do we get? What did Public Square get with this additional money?
To the
services, as far as services.
So again, they would provide things like, for instance, I could just kind of read from what the agreement says here. When it comes to things like streets, they will maintain pavers in the crosswalks. When it comes to the park maintenance, they'll do daily removal of trash from all receptacles. They'll do snow and ice clearance from the sidewalks.
So the group plan will do this?
Group plan does this, correct.
So we giving the money to the group plan?
Correct.
And they're going to, okay.
Yes.
Just to the chair, just to expound on that. So a lot of the things that are in that downtown area are specialized items such as pavers or different types of things. Our groups are more, we're not the landscapers, we just cut the grass, but they would do the more enhanced types of things that you would expect in the downtown area.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to open this up to my colleagues for questions. Does anybody have any questions on Ordinance 748? Councilman Brian Cage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the director, are there any other parks in the city of Cleveland that we give any type of contracts to for outside organizations to maintain those parks?
Through the chair to the councilman, there are probably maybe, from my recollection, maybe about 4 or 5 that we have agreements with. As far as actually paying money to them, I don't believe so. I think we have, for instance, like Maplewood, and we have Humphrey, where we have an agreement where they do the work and they keep any receipts from what they do out there. But as far as actually making payments to these groups, I can't think of any as far as parks goes.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, do we know of any philanthropic or any other organizations that help contribute to Public Square, or is this $500,000 just strictly out of the general fund?
Through the chair to the councilperson, I do not know of any other group that donates to this. I can check and we get back to you, but
All
for
right.
right now, I can't say that I know that.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, is this a yearly allocation?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes. That's
And then has it always been $500,000?
through the chair to the councilman, to my recollection, yes. This is,
Okay.
I think, we're on our fifth one now, going through our sixth. So yes.
All right.
All right, is any other questions on ordinance number 748, 2023? All right, seeing no further questions on ordinance 748, 2023 is approved. Ordinance number 897, 2023 by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request. This is also an emergency ordinance, authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute various deeds of permanent and temporary easements that will grant the Ohio Department of Transportation certain easement rights to rehabilitate a culvert under Chagrin Boulevard at the Highland Park Golf Course and declaring the easement rights not needed for the city's public use. Okay, Director, can you explain this piece of ordinance?
Good morning. My name is Suzanne DeGenero. I'm the Commissioner of Real Estate, and I will speak to this piece. The legislation authorizes the Director of Public Works to sell 3 easements needed for the rehabilitation of a culvert under Chagrin Boulevard to the Ohio Department of Transportation. This culvert carries Mill Creek under Chagrin Boulevard, just north of the city's Highland Park Golf Course in Highland Hills, and Mill Creek then daylights when it reaches the golf course. The project is being funded by ODOT and requires 3 easements: a permanent highway easement to construct a concrete head wall for the culvert, a permanent channel easement to install rock channel protection, which will prevent stream erosion, and a temporary construction easement for access and grading purposes. The sale of the easements is at a price value of $6,000. Access to the project area will be from Chagrin Boulevard only and will not impact golf course activities. We have notified the new golf course operator, and they're in agreement with the plan. Upon construction completion, the area will be restored to pre-construction conditions. In 2016, the Regional Sewer District completed a restoration of Mill Creek within the golf course, and the city and Ohio EPA entered into an environmental covenant in connection therewith. The proposed easements overlap the environmental covenant area, which Ohio EPA has agreed to, and ODOT has agreed to replace any impacted trees and has actually agreed to plant additional trees similar in species to the trees that were planted as part of the stream restoration project. So the project will actually be a significant enhancement to the area. Thank you.
Okay. Now, what is a culvert?
It's a pipe that goes under the roadway to carry water, typically. And
The wastewater, is it
no, it's the Mill Creek stream.
stormwater?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the stream itself that's culverted under the roadway, Mill
Okay.
Creek Stream. It's culverted to the north of the golf course, and then when it reaches Chagrin Boulevard and crosses under, it daylights into the golf course and was recently restored. So it's like the stream goes underground and then under the roadway, and then it actually daylights, so you can see it when you're at the golf course.
So when you say daylights, that means you can see it from the golf course?
Correct.
Okay. And everything else is kind of underground.
Yes.
Now, how long will these easements be in effect?
The highway easement and the channel easement are permanent. The
Okay.
temporary easement for construction and grading is 18 months.
18 months. All right. Is there any questions from my colleagues on ordinance number 897. Councilman Joe Jones?
Thank you, sir. Does the director have, Mr. Chairman, a location where that's at, like a visual?
There should be a map. Do you see on your tablet a map that shows? So it's just north of Highland Park Golf Course, right on Chagrin Boulevard. I thought that we had sent a map down. I apologize. It's to the west of South Green Road. So it's in between, north of the golf course on Chagrin Boulevard, in between Northfield Road to the west and Green Road to the east.
I'm trying to get a visual.
You want to take a look at the map?
Yes. Thank you. And the existing culvert that's there right now, has it collapsed?
It's in pretty bad condition. Actually, ODOT is going to sleeve the culvert, so they're not having to tear up the road and, remove the culvert and rebuild it. They're actually going to take a pipe that's slightly smaller than the pipe that's there, the culvert that's there, and sleeve it in. So it's actually minimal impact.
And this won't have any impact on the driving range development?
No, none whatsoever. It's far enough away from the golf course that...
It's like in the road, isn't it? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Pretty much, yep.
Okay.
In the road and a little portion of golf course. There's a piece of the golf course that it kind of separates the road from the actual course itself, probably for safety reasons.
And how much is the cost of this? The next question, and then the second one is who's paying for it?
ODOT is paying for all of the construction. I'm not sure of the total project budget. I can get that information for you. We're being paid, the city's being paid $6,000 for the easement rights.
Oh, I see. Okay. This seems like it's going to be a big job.
It is, but not as big as it would have been had the culvert had to be dug up.
Oh, so you're just going to actually go up under the ground and put the culvert? I thought I heard you say that.
Yeah, just to kind of sleeve in a new pipe to stabilize the culvert.
It's just different.
Yeah.
Congratulations. No further questions, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
All right, is there any other questions on ordinance number 897? All right, seeing no further questions on ordinance 897 is approved.
Thank you.
All right, ordinance number 817, 2023. By council members Bishop and Griffin, it's a departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend sections 3178, 3179, 40133, 40304, 45301, 45302, 45303, 45304, 45501, 45505, 45507, 45509, and 45510 of the codified ordinance of the City of Cleveland, 1976, as amended by various ordinances relating to parking rates, parking meters, and municipal parking facilities. Okay? All right. Commissioner and/or Director.
Thank you. Through a chair to the body, we do have this passage of this legislation is necessary to complete on-street parking enhancements. I do have Assistant Director Laird and also Assistant Director Kim Johnson, the illustrious Kim Johnson, here for a presentation on this project to further clarify some of the issues that we had before and hopefully get this over the finish line on today. I'll turn it over and defer to Commissioner Johnson.
Good morning, Chairman Bishop and other members of council. Thank you so much for hearing this piece this morning. I'm just going to take you briefly through this presentation. So the first slide that you see here just kind of gives you an opportunity to see how we're proposing to set rates. It's related to Ordinance 13170 and 13179, and it gives an example of a proposed rate for the Wheeler Garage. As you can see, and then how that compares to the other garages in the area. So the most important part that I'd like to point out here is that if parkers are coming downtown to park for any activity, they'll have up to 3 hours in our proposed rate to take care of any business, get permits, seek birth certificates, things of that nature. Whereas if you look at the bottom row, you'll see that in parking lots around in our area, in our immediate area, parkers will reach the maximum in just a little short of an hour. So I just want to go briefly over the various ordinances that we have. So we're requesting to amend Ordinance 40133 to define a meter under our expanded parking model to include single-space, multi-space, and mobile application-based devices. In the next two ordinances, we are requesting to amend the time parking is limited or prohibited from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and to provide the option to limit free parking on Saturdays and Sundays. Parking will continue to be free on various holidays as listed, including Friday after Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas. We're requesting Section A of Ordinance 45301 be amended to remove the reference to street parking adjacent to a meter and establish that vehicles are to park in an individual parking space within a parking zone. Because now it's not just, we don't have, the mechanical meters, so we're referring to areas as zones, and the ordinance needs to be amended appropriately. We're also requesting remove reference to payment by deposit of coin and replace with remit payment of parking fee, which includes payment by coin or credit. Section B will authorize the Director of Public Works to charge and collect fees, set hours of operation, set days of operation, set intervals of time parking per parking zone, and adjust parking rates based on customer demand. This kind of outlines a sample of the proposed rates that we're looking at. The first strategy is to establish a base rate of $1.50 per hour for a maximum 2-hour session. That's similar to what you see today. The second rate is what we call a progressive rate, which provides an opportunity for a parker to extend their parking session, but at a higher rate. So if a parker is attending a meeting and it runs a little longer than they anticipated, they will have the option to extend their parking session, but they would have to do so at a higher rate. We want to encourage all-day parkers to utilize off-street parking facilities in an effort to support turnover of on-street parking. If someone wants to run in to one of our downtown restaurants to pick up lunch, there should be an on-street parking opportunity available for them to do so. The third tier establishes rates for on-street parking during a special event. In this example, if someone wants to visit the Science Center or Rock Hall on a Sunday for a couple hours when the Cleveland Browns are playing, they could park on street for $10 rather than pay $50 in a parking lot. This last slide kind of gives some indication about where we are in the division of parking facilities as it relates to our parking revenue and expenses. The orange line shows our expenses, and the blue shows the revenue. And if you will see since 2018, what's been consistent is that our expenditures are outweighing our revenue. And what is so significant about this is that the Division of Parking Facilities it's a small enterprise fund.
It's the who, I'm sorry.
A small enterprise fund. And as such, we're responsible to function in a similar manner like a private business, which means that we are to utilize our receipts to pay the expenses of our operation. The Division of Parking Facility is currently being subsidized by the general fund. The increase in rates will not only help the division meet its obligation as a small enterprise unit, but also contribute to the many repairs and improvements that are sorely needed in the Willard Garage and our municipal parking lot. Some of those include simple things like resurfacing the parking lot and striping it, improving the lighting and the signage inside of our garage. And so we're hoping to be able to use the revenue that we'll receive as a part of our rate increases to take care of some of these very much needed improvements in the garage. That concludes our presentations, and we welcome any questions.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So let me first start off by asking, in the ordinance, the amendments that we made in August to these, to section 13178, where it says parking fees in the Willard Park Garage, are those reflected in this piece of legislation, Commissioner?
I think we'd have to refer to the law department. I'm not certain whether or not it was voted on at the time, but I don't know.
I was actually a little confused about that myself. I have an email from Commissioner Johnson, or from Nancy to Lanzola to Commissioner Johnson saying, this piece is on MSP this morning, you hear the amendments to it. The partial proposed amendment is not attached, but the other one is. I'm not sure which is which. Because I have the Kevin Roberts made amendment to this that appears to be incorporated, but then the copy I have also has a bunch of like handwriting in it, and I don't even know whose handwriting that is. So I'm not sure. There is an amendment interlineated in the copy I have here, but then there's also apparently another amendment that's not attached, and I'm wondering if that's what all the handwriting is, but I don't know what that is, so I'm not sure.
So that kind of confused us more. So,
Yeah.
so I guess if we don't have it, if we don't see it, we don't have it. Correct? I'm just assuming that we don't have it.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not sure what other amendments that you were talking about. I'm not exactly sure what set of amendments.
It's
How
just
do I?
one line. I think that's the only amendment that they
That's
gave
the only
us.
one.
But like your parking garage rate, I think we have to remake it.
Are we
that's the
referring
wrong-
to the
that's the
one
wrong
there
one.
where it's just that little one section that needs to be changed, Mr. Chairman?
Everything goes through the chair. Councilman, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was asking you. I was like, Mr. Chairman, that one section here, is that the proposed amendment, the only one for this piece?
What section are you looking at?
I'm looking
Councilman?
at the part of the presentation where it says Section 1 at amend 403-04, line 1, after.
No, that's not the one I was referring to. So we made amendments in August to this to section 13178. Okay, does anybody have any questions on this ordinance?
Well, I have some questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilman Jones.
Well, first, listening to the attorney, is there more amendments than what we were talking about that we don't have? Or I'm just listening to our attorney. I don't know if there was others that's supposed to be here. Are we going to be trying to interpret the handwriting on the existing amendments?
I'm definitely not going to do that.
Right.
But so yeah, apparently there are two different amendments. There's a partial proposed amendment that wasn't attached, and then there was another amendment that is. And that one is section 1, amended section 4 of 3.04A, line 1, that were provided, insert hearing and that is, okay, and then I have another. So there were 3 amendments? I have no idea. This is unusual.
Okay, Councilman Jones, you got?
Well, you know, our attorney is saying it's unusual. So, let me just get into some questions I want to ask that I think are important based upon the presentation this morning. The first question, Mr. Chairman, to the director, if you, in your presentation, you showed us a slide where, and let me try to find it. It showed how much money was coming into the revenue fund, and we were showing a loss. Is there a reason why our projections are so low based from 2018 currently here to 2022? Maybe I don't see a 2023 projections, but with the passing of this piece of legislation here, will we? You know, I guess the issue would be, Mr. Chairman, why is our revenues have dropped so far?
Council Chair Bishop to Councilman Jones, one of the reasons why our revenue has dropped is because we have not increased our rates. However, our expenses have increased.
So these pricings, but I hear that, but I'm looking at the numbers too, right? So if our rates haven't increased, we still dropped. You know, we're at 10 million in 2018 and 7.9 million, 10.5 in 2018 and 7.9 here in 2022. So even if the rates are the same, still your revenues have dropped. Do we know why the revenues have dropped? Is it people not using our parking lots? Is it an issue of traffic flow? Is there some science to this?
Council Chairman to Councilman Jones, our competitors have the ability as parking demands permit to raise their rates. We, however, don't have that flexibility to do that in that same manner. So we have our revenue has not kept pace along with the expenses that we have incurred. Now, you'll see in the chart how our revenues are beginning. We did have a couple of COVID years, of course, but our revenue is beginning to climb, but so are our expenses. And so we came forward with this piece of legislation not only to make the enhancements to our on-street meter, but also to correct and to increase our rates in order that we might keep pace with the expenses, because over time expenses have been increasing.
Let me ask this question, Mr. Chairman. So I understand, Mr. Chairman, to the director, the difference between the expenses and the revenues. And, I understand the factor that we have not been able to adjust our rates because we have to you don't have that flexibility in your department to do that. I understand that. What I'm trying to grasp at and try to understand is, in COVID year, we had 6 million. We further went south in 2021, and it seems like in 2022, we're catching up. What is our projection for 2023?
Council Chairman to Councilman Jones, I do not have the projection in front of me, but I'll be certain to get that to you for 2023. But we are, if you look at the budget book, we are being subsidized by the general fund.
Right.
We're projected to be subsidized by the general fund this year as well.
Right. So knowing what the projection would be for 2023, and then, Mr. Chairman, having an understanding that if we approve these rates here, based upon how we approve these rates, what is our future projections, 2-3 years down the line? I think that, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, we should have that information before us, especially when we're talking about making these increases. How does these, Mr. Chairman, does these decisions we make here today improve our revenue, as well as look at how we're going to deal with our expenditures based upon, what we're doing here. So we should have those projections, Mr. Chairman. And we should, Mr. Chairman, have the projections for the last 6 months. Our accounting department is a really good accounting department. Those reports should be here in front of us. We should have at least half of what we've been able to bring in, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, and I think having that information is important here. And then, Mr. Chairman, I think to the Director, really thoroughly coming back at the question that I'm asking and really making an investigation on it. Why are our projections? Why is our revenues down? If our rates are lower than our competitors, then it seems like we should not have lost revenue. It seems like everybody and their mom should have been parking in these meters or parking wherever we have our parking locations because they have a better deal. That's what it seems like to me, is that our parking rates are lower than our competitors. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, to the Director?
Through the chair to the council member, that is correct.
Right, so it doesn't make sense to me, Mr. Chairman, sitting here on this end of the table to see our revenue down so far. So there has to be a reason why our revenues are down, Mr. Chairman, to the Director. So knowing the science on the reason why our revenue is down is important, because you're not saying to me that we'll catch up and we'll have the revenues, because we don't have a science on why our revenues are down right now.
Through the chair to the council member, through the various presentations that we made throughout the time on this topic, we did give those projections. These are the actuals here that's in front of you, so we didn't represent those, but we can submit that to you again for review.
Well, the issue is, the question was asked at the table, and it should have been articulated, why is our revenues down? So if you're telling me on the one side, and I'm trying to make sense of this, right, that the revenues are down because we didn't have flexibility, like our competitors. Well, if our revenues are down and, and it's an issue of being able to increase our rates, that's one thing, but it still doesn't tell us that our revenues, I don't have a science behind the reasons why our revenues would be down, given the fact that if we're the best competition in town, everyone should be going to us. At least our numbers should be the same.
Through the chair to the council person, to that point that you just make is, and I'm sorry for not articulating that, is clearly with the issue has been the turnover. If those are the cheapest rates in town, folk park in them and stay in them for 8 and 10 hours or stay overnight versus those spaces turning over like in the other areas, so we would actually gain more revenue if those spaces turned over. If they're only sitting there only collecting $1 or $1.50 an hour for 10 straight hours, they're not turning over at the rate that some of the other ones are at $5 or $10.
Then we ticket them, because the process is if they're stayed there and they don't have the money.
A lot of that is what's going to be covered here as it relates to moving forward, so that we can do better.
No, I'm there with helping you support this piece of legislation. The issue is that I'm stuck right now. And so I'm trying to get past that stuck point. And the stuck point is simple, is that if there's a science to the reason why the revenue's down, and we're not hearing it here at the table. So part of that explanation you gave here. But the other portion of that is, where's our guys at that go out there and make sure that those meters are being turned around? Are we down on that side of the staff, and that's what's helping to push the revenue down? We don't have people that go and write the tickets. I mean, that would be, for me, understanding the science on the reason why our revenues are going down.
Well, through the chair to the council person, again, that would be part of what's happening. So when we do adjust those rates, adjust those timings, then we would adjust the enforcement, which would increase the revenue. Those are all those things that are encompassed in the two pieces that we brought before you.
Well, let me ask this question, Mr. Chairman. Do we have the same, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, to the Commissioner, do we have the same enforcement people? Did we lose enforcement people who would enforce those meters?
Through the chair to the councilperson, as of right now, we do have the same, but we do plan on some enhancements as it relates to that as this matriculate through council.
So we have the same amount of inspectors that's
Today, yes.
today that we did back in 2018?
I'm not sure of that.
Since 2018, the parking enforcement officers may have lost a couple parking enforcement officers since 2018.
Okay. So we're not sure, but there's a possibility that we're down. You are down.
We are sure that the level from 2018 is not the same level as it is in 2022.
Do we know, just would two people make that big of a difference? And is it two people or is it more, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner for clarification?
So, Council Chair, to the Councilman, I want to make certain that you're understanding that this is, not only are we talking about on-street parking, but we're also talking about off-street parking, parking in our municipal lot, parking in the Wheeler Garage, and increasing our parking rates for those facilities as well. I'll give you a great example. This most recent Browns game, our max rate to charge for the Browns game is $30 per parker. Our competitors are charging $50, $60, and $70. When I say that it is time for us to increase our rates, it's not only about the market that's out there, but also since 2018, 19, 20, expenses have also increased. It's not no longer does it cost us the same to maintain equipment and services as it did in 2018. All of our expenses are increasing as well, as you can see in this chart. However, our revenue is remaining stagnant because we are not seeking additional revenue. So as we move out, we're not talking about moving beyond what the market is going to bear, but doing a modest increase so that we can meet our obligations as a parking operation, as a small enterprise unit.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to a distinguished lady, I get exactly what you're saying. I'm not in contention with that. I think that, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner, that that makes sense to be competitive in your pricing with competitors around. So I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with, Mr. Chairman, is just the science of understanding why, right? So for me, what is unclear to me sitting here at this end of the table is if I go out to one of my director managers and I say, hey, I'm looking here, these projections are really low. Is it an issue where we're not filling the client, we're not taking care of the orders that the client has put in place? Why do we have a decline in our numbers? Is it an issue of our contractors? They're not out there taking care of the work. Why are our revenues and numbers in this location versus this location is down? Having a science of understanding, what went wrong here at this table helps us to manage and be able to say, okay, we don't have a problem with being competitive with other competitors, but if you're 15 employees down, and that's the reason why your revenues is down, because you don't have a driving people driving to go and write those tickets and make those cars pay their fair share versus just sitting at a meter and the meters ran out and you don't have anybody to enforce that, as the director clearly stated that they're 24 hours over this clock and they only paid $1.50. You know, I may have taken that out of context, but that's the way it came across to me. And so the issue is that if you have your people who's supposed to enforce this, then your revenue should not have went down here. Now, going down, your revenue is going down in the year of COVID makes sense, and then you have to kind of recover in the following year makes sense too. But right now, we should be all the way up to where we should be, and we should, you know, if we got the right enforcement mechanisms in place, sounds like we might not. But where are we doing bad? What facilities are we doing bad? Where are we losing our revenues? You have, like you eloquently, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner has said, you have a number of facilities, number of location sites. So having the science of understanding where we're dropping at, how do we need to reinvent ourselves, how do we need to market our program, how we need to be competitive against those who are competing against us, and then at the same time get the biggest bang for what we do here at this table in terms of passing legislation is important to me. So I don't have that science. That's all I'm saying.
If I may, through the chair, too,
Okay.
Councilman, I think one thing, the difference between the projections and the actuals is one thing, but I think even if you looked at the actuals here, you'll notice that the revenues are on an upswing, so they're coming back up. But you also notice that the expenditures are increasing more so. So even if we had everything all together, if we had all the enforcement happening, it's a fine-tuned machine, the expenses are still are going beyond our revenues. And so the way to close that gap, we believe, is to increase our rates.
I don't disagree with that. So all I'm saying is that I get what you're saying on the expenditures and the revenues. I'm not opposed to that. What I'm saying to you is you're not bringing the information to me so I can clearly understand what is, like, for an example, what are our expenditures? None of that is explained in here. You don't have the projections on, if we do an increase here, what that increase would look like in year 24. We don't even have any projections for 23. We don't know what 24, 25, 26 projections would be if we pass this legislation. So it's like we're passing off something we really don't know. We have an attorney down at the other end of the table who has 2 or 3 different amendments that need to be made, starting this whole proposition out. I would have thought we would have had it all together by now. And so, Mr. Chairman, my question would be, just simply, what are the expenditures? What are these numbers we're looking at? What are the expenditures would be the question. Number 2, why are the expenditures are up? You know, what are we doing that's major into these various different facilities? We have none of that information. And Mr. Chairman, we have no information as it relates to the science on the reason why we're losing money. I mean, we can't stop the bleeding, Mr. Chairman, if we don't know where we're bleeding at. We can't stop the wound unless we know where we're bleeding at. We're bleeding somewhere. From $10 million in 2018, 10.5 down to 7.9, which is a significant increase from 2021. But it still doesn't make any sense to me because I don't have any numbers in front of me, Mr. Chairman. And I'm asking the director with all sweet kindness if you can give me some examples on why we're losing money, and then what are some of our expenditures, and do we have that where we can make that available? And I don't have, and I'm gonna just tell you, I'm not in opposition to your thrust of why you're here to be competitive. So I'm all for that. But I can't understand anything about what you do if I don't know what your expenditures are. I don't know anything if you can't tell me how you're losing revenue. And I don't see anything here. So if we look at revenue loss, where's your greatest revenue loss in your parking industry right now for the city of Cleveland? Where are we losing the most money?
Council Chair, to the councilman, your first question went back to what was our projected revenue for 2023, and that's $8.3 million.
Is who?
$8.3 million.
Okay.
Is our projected revenue.
8.3 million.
That's correct, sir. 8.3. Now, in terms of other than what's outlined in our budget, I would certainly be more than happy to share with you what types of things that we spend we spend to operate. Is that what you're looking for? When you ask the question of expenditures, are you looking for us to be able to tell you how we're spending or what we're spending our money on? Because I could provide you a list if that's the
No,
case.
ma'am. What I'm asking for is just a quick outline, right? Which says this is how much, this is our revenue losses. Where are we losing our revenue at? So you would have to have a snapshot of where that's at. Where's our biggest losses? And then if you have somebody that's really good working for you, they'll tell you why you're making those losses. Why are we losing over here now all of a sudden when we were at a net positive? So is it an issue of density of population or businesses that went down? There would be some level of explanation on the reason why revenues is down. And then if you have a real good person, then they'll tell you what you need to do to fix it, you know. And then that's just in that one little section, because you're talking about a multiple facets of parking throughout the city. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner?
So, Council Chair, to the Councilman, the simple fact is, and you asked for a simple answer with regards to, and I don't see that we are losing revenue. We're not losing revenue. Our revenue, as I shared before, Assistant Director Laird shared, our revenue is increasing. It's not that we are losing revenue. It is that the revenue that we're receiving because of the fees that we are charging are not keeping pace with the expenditures. So we are not losing. Business is improving. We are receiving, but we cannot keep up with, even though, and as this chart shows, our revenue is increasing. However, our expenditures are outpacing that. And so you ask for a simple solution and a simple response, and that is the simple response. There is no science behind why. The science is that we charge $30, our competitors charge $60 and $70, and our expenses are not keeping pace with the revenue that we have. That is the simplicity of it all.
If I
Mr.
could,
Chairman, you know, let me just say this real quick. And I love the Commissioner and the Director, so I'm not here to fight with you about it. I'm just here to just point out to you that, you know, what I'm looking at right now don't make no sense to me. And if I had a person that worked for me and I was losing money and they couldn't tell me where the fix is at, I'd fire them. It wouldn't be no questions asked. If I ask you the question where you're bleeding at and you can't tell me where you're bleeding at, and I've asked you several times where you're bleeding at and you can't tell me where you're bleeding at, when I look at this chart here from 2018, our revenues is $10.5 million. Our expenditures are more than our revenues coming in. So it's the same argument that you're making here is the same argument in 2018. We spent more money in expenditures than we did in revenues. When we look at 2019 at the 10.3, again, our expenditures was 10.6. So I'm like, okay, where is this money going to, right? So if you're asking us right now to enhance the parking system and to give you the authority to increase the rates, I should at least bare minimum have an executive package that gives me projections. It should give me some projections on what this legislation would do to make the difference in changing our revenue and expenditure situation. I should also, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner Director and that executive portfolio, it should also list what those, at least the last 2 years' expenditures, as well as should talk about where our revenues are coming in, which are some of our parking locations in the city of Cleveland that gives us the biggest projections in terms of our revenue gains. I should also know the areas where I'm weak at. You should have a SWOT analysis of the program in front of me so that I can, when I'm looking at this, I can say, oh yeah, we're going to get a director everything. This is what she needs. Look at her expenditures. This is her expenses. Here's the reasons why we're down. Here's our strengths and our weaknesses. I don't have any of that. All I have in front of me right now, Mr. Chairman, is a fancy piece that gives me no real fundamentals of what I'm asking for, other than saying, hey, we have these projections here, these are our actuals, and then we need this to be competitive, but it shows me nothing else after that. And then I have an attorney, I'm quite sure he's gotten it all together by now, on which amendments we're going to have and what those amendments mean. But with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield the floor. If the administration can come up with some kind of SWOT analysis to give me the kind of information I need, that would help me. But I'm not in opposition to your piece of legislation. Just your legislation doesn't have the kind of portfolio that's needed to be looked at here at this table, so that we can make the right decision in saying, okay, we supported this piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman, as an example to the director, and here's why we supported this piece. Because you gave us a SWOT analysis, you told us what the issues were, you shared with us the expenditures in addition to where our revenues are and what you're going to do and assure it back up, and then why you were down is an example, and then how are you going to get back up and how are you going to go do that, and what's the new marketing plan to be able to increase the revenues. That's all I need to see.
Okay, Councilman, you yield the floor, Councilman?
Mr. Chairman, I'm yielding to you because I like these guys and I don't want to beat them up over on the table. They'll be looking at me mad all day long.
So, Commissioner, is there a way that you can get Councilman Jones any more detail as far as where expenditures are going up? Do you have that ability?
Yes, I'd be happy to try to provide some additional information for Councilman Jones.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. And Councilman Jones, we are going to get those amendments squared away. I'm going to go to Councilman Charles Sly.
Thank you, and it's just a quick point of clarification back to our earlier conversation. Thank you to Brooke for passing out an updated amendment form. I believe, if I recall correctly, that we were still debating the amendment that is listed as number 1 here, which relates to, I know you're concerned about the Willard rate. So I'm assuming that we have to make that amendment. In addition to that, and kind of going back to that marathon meeting in August, one of the concerns, and this is, so I've been speaking with Councilman McCormick and Councilwoman Spencer, and I can't make an amendment. I'm not on the committee, but I want to propose an amendment that I think cuts to what I think some of the disconnect was. So historically or currently, the parking rates are for meters, we're talking meters here, are the differentiate between the downtown parking area, institutional areas, and then essentially the rest of the city that has meters. And each of those 3 categories has different rates. And I think part of the hang-up was that the legislation as proposed boils them all down into one common category with a range, $1 to $8 an hour. And I think that speaking for the 3 of us at least, understood why there would be a 1 to 8 range downtown and why there would be the ability to have a variable rate for special events. The concern is not so much that a parking meter is going to be at $8 an hour in Cam's Corners in a month from now, but the worry was more that by having that same broad range, that over time moving forward into the coming years, there's less of a touch point as rates would need to increase in kind of more outlying neighborhoods, even if we all agreed to it. So we were discussing of ways to try to amend the legislation to essentially go back to an acknowledgement that there's a lot of this is focused on the downtown parking area, but not trying to make the downtown parking rules and goals be so broadly applicable across the rest of the city. So I think that can be done very easily because in the legislation in 403.04, the downtown parking area is a defined geographical entity. So what I would suggest, Mr. Chair, and again, I can't make a motion, but later in the legislation in 45301B, which is currently reads, the Director of Public Works is authorized to charge and cause to be collected the payment required in parking meter zones, such charges and fees ranging from $1 to $8 per hour, and is further authorized to establish regulations that set forth the days of the week, hours of the day, and intervals of time for which parking is permissible. I think after that $1 to $8 range, you could insert in the downtown parking area and $1 to $4 outside of the downtown parking area. And then that now creates a clear delineation that in outside of downtown, the cap is $4. That still gives, I think, leeway for the administration to set rates and change over time, adapt to inflation. I don't think that anyone's going to charge $4 an hour tomorrow because no one would pay it. It'd be too high. But it allows, I think, the downtown to flex a little more, and for the other neighborhoods to be pared back a little bit. The other change that we had discussed, which would, I guess, I don't know if it needs to be a second amendment, but the next section, 45301C, and towards the middle, it delineates the times that parking isn't charged, and it strikes out Saturdays and Sundays. And the intent of this is to currently weekends are free, and to switch to making weekends paid. And I know that it's Councilman McCormick's strong position that weekends should be charged downtown, but I know that Councilwoman Spencer and I have discomfort, particularly with Sunday having to pay the meter on Sunday in an outlying neighborhood. So the change there would be maintain Saturday as striked, which means paying on Saturday, and then Sunday, change it to Sunday outside of the downtown parking area. So parking rates would apply in the geographically defined downtown parking area, but nowhere else. And I think with those two small changes, it meets our desire to make sure that we are not having the downtown goals apply to the neighborhoods, but we're not muddying the entire system and losing money downtown when we could be making money downtown. So that, I'm happy to kind of spell that out for someone. I don't know if it would be your preference for Councilman McCormick or Councilman Spencer to make those in finance, since they're both on finance. I'm not on finance. But I think that was a lot of the conversation and sticking point in August was about this, and I think that rectifies it. Now, before I stop, and I'll let them respond, I think the only caveat in that is right now that institutional area, which is essentially University Circle, would cease to exist. So as I just proposed, University Circle, Little Italy would be treated like another neighborhood, and if we wanted to be able to have more premium parking rates at like around Severance Hall or something, we might need to further amend the legislation now or later to define like what an institutional area is, if it's so desired. I'm not gonna say one way or the other. That's not my ward. I'm not gonna pretend like I know. But right now, we are essentially losing that category in either if we pass as proposed or pass as I proposed amending.
All right, thank you, Councilman Slife. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, so to recap that, Councilman Slife, you are proposing 45301 Section B and 45301 Section C?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Commissioner, you want to respond?
Mr. Chairman, is that a part?
Hold on just a minute, Councilman. Commissioner, you want to respond to that?
Is that in here?
Council Chair, Councilman Slife, the administration does not have any objection to the amendments.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Councilman Jones, do you have a question?
The distinguished colleague, Mr. Starr, is answering it for me. But what I was going to say initially was, how has it been in the past, Mr. Chairman, to Director?
Do you want me to print it?
In terms of downtown fees in general? Because there's the discussion that, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank Richard Starr. Appreciate you, brother. The issue is how does it, when you look at the proposed changes being made, and see that's the reason why it's so important to say, okay, if we make these changes, our revenue projections are going to go down, because the math is this is how much we've been projected to get previously in years past, and this is where we are now. So my question would be, again, on the level of projections, if we make these changes, would that make any difference? It wouldn't make much difference at all.
Council Chair to Councilman Jones, we engaged Desmond, who is a professional parking consultant, to assist us on this project. And one of the things that they found and confirmed is the downtown parking area. And I can't recall the exact percentage, but they are the lion's share of the, produce the lion's share of the on-street parking revenue. So this amendment would not impact that lion's share.
All right, Councilman Jones, you done?
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is there any other questions? Councilman Casey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll propose an amendment in 453.01B. After $8, insert in the downtown parking area and $1 to $4 outside of the downtown parking area. And in 403.01C, replace strikeout Sundays with Sundays outside of the downtown parking area.
All right. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right, is there any discussion?
Okay. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on just a minute.
No, I'll let Bishop do that. Yeah.
We typically need to move to amend the number 1 and 2, because that wasn't in the packet that
This one?
Yeah.
That was Bishop's.
Mr. Chairman, I can't hear
Okay,
the...
okay, we'll take care of that.
What was that, Mr. Chairman?
We got 2 amendments. Hold on, Councilman Jones. Okay. All right, so at discussion is the amendment that Councilman Casey has put forth. Is there a second on that amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, Councilman Starr seconds that amendment. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilman Jones?
Can the distinguished gentleman, Mr. Casey, explain the proposition of the amendment and what it would actually do?
Okay, Councilman Jones, the amendment is the pieces that Councilman Slight had just talked about in the downtown parking area, and to try to separate the downtown parking area from other parts of parking area throughout the city. So what he's saying is the gist of the amendment is that so that we have designated downtown parking area separated from University Circle, from Cam's Corner, from Shaker Square. Okay?
That's part of it, right?
That's part of that amendment.
What's the other part? Is about time?
That's all that amendment is standing for. It's
Okay.
just so they'll
This one
separate
that we're talking about.
the downtown parking area from other parts
And
of the
is
city.
there, and that's just for Sundays only, or is that for Saturdays and Sundays?
No, that's for he wants Sundays outside of downtown so it won't be charged in the Cam's Corner. Okay?
Right.
University.
So do you want us to read the amendment over again?
No. If the issue is, Mr. Chairman, is to ask the gentleman who made the amendment to explain it, but you've explained it very clearly to me.
Okay.
So I don't think that we need to ask for anything different.
Okay. All right.
makes
So
sense.
okay. Is there any other discussion on that amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that amendment carries. All right. Councilman Starr?
Thank you, Chairman. I do have an amendment. I would like to read into this legislation. I think this mic not is on. Okay. Section 1, regarding Section 131-1 Point 78, the Wheeler Garage, we have a couple different amendments we would like to do. The general monthly rate, instead of going up to 200, we would like to strike that and change that to a monthly rate of 175. And that will be with Section Part E of the Wheeler Garage. And then also for Section F, where it says special monthly rate for city employees, instead of being up to 75, we will make that up to 65, from 55 to 65. And then also we have another amendment we would like to make under special events, which will be from 675 to 600, which will be portion Part K under Wheeler Garage. And then also we would like to do for Section 2, which was the Canal Basin lot, we would definitely change that into striking it from up to $50 as opposed to that $60 mark. And then also we have another part under North Coast Municipal Parking Lots under Section E, where it says flat rate of up to $70. We would make that up to $60.
All right, is there a second for that motion? Okay, Councilman Harrison seconds that motion. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Are we open for discussion?
Pardon me, Councilman
Are
Jones?
we open for discussion on the amendments?
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear the administration's response to the changes.
Commissioner.
The council chair to the councilman, the administration does not have any objections to the changes.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No objections.
No objections.
Okay. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the amendment carries. All right, is there any other questions on ordinance number 817, 2023? All right, seeing no further questions on 817, 2023, 817, 2023 stands approved. All right, Director, do you have any other comments?
To the chair, no, I don't.
Commissioner?
Council chair, to the other council members, thank you.
All right, it's a long road on that piece of legislation, huh? All right, seeing no further questions, the Municipal Service and Property Committee is hereby adjourned.